Energy and ATP. Define what energy is and why organisms need it. Explain how ATP stores energy. Describe how ATP is synthesized. Describe the role of ATP in biological processes. So just to see where this is in the biological molecules topic. And here's a specification reference from AQA. So a single molecule of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is a nucleotide derivative and is formed from a molecule of ribose, a molecule of adenine, and 3 phosphate groups. So you've got the adenine, ribose, and 3 phosphate groups. Hydrolysis of ATP to adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, and an inorganic phosphate, PI, is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP hydrolase. The hydrolysis of ATP can be coupled to energy-requiring reactions within cells. The inorganic phosphate released during the hydrolysis of ATP can be used to phosphorylate other compounds, often making them more reactive. ATP is resynthesized by the condensation of ADP and phosphate. This reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP synthase during photosynthesis or during respiration. So as an introduction, all organisms need energy to remain alive, and this energy comes from the sun. Plants use solar energy to combine water and carbon dioxide into complex organic molecules during photosynthesis. Both plants and animals then oxidize these organic molecules to make adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is used as a main energy to carry out processes within cells. Structure of ATP. The ATP molecule is a phosphorylated macromolecule and it has 3 parts. You've got adenine, which is a nitrogen-containing organic base. Ribose, which is a sugar molecule with a 5-carbon ring, a pentose sugar, that acts as the backbone to which the other parts are attached. And then you've got phosphates. You've got a chain of 3 phosphate groups. How ATP stores energy. Adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is a nucleotide and has 3 phosphate groups. And the bonds between the phosphate groups are unstable and have a low activation energy, which means they are easily broken. And when they break, they release lots of energy. How ATP stores energy. So it's only the terminal phosphate that's removed. So the equation for this is ATP plus H2O goes to ADP plus PI plus energy. As water is used to convert ATP to ADP, it must be a hydrolysis reaction, and it's catalyzed by the enzyme ATP hydrolase, or ATPase. Synthesis of ATP. Conversions of ATP to ADP is reversible, so energy can be used to add inorganic phosphate to ADP to reform ATP. So the equation for this is ADP plus PI plus energy goes to ATP plus H2O. And it is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP synthase. As water is removed, it's a condensation reaction. Just a really big note, you cannot make energy, you can only release it. Synthesis of ATP. Synthesis of ATP from ADP involves the addition of a phosphate molecule to ADP. It happens in 3 ways. Either in chlorophyll, contained in plants in the photosynthesis, and this is known as photophosphorylation. In plant and animals in respiration, which is known as oxidative phosphorylation. In plants and animals when phosphate is transferred from donor molecules to ADP, which is known as substrate level phosphorylation. Roles of ATP. The feature that makes ATP a good energy donor is its instability of its phosphate bonds. It also the reason why it is not a good long-time energy store. Fats and carbohydrates such as glycogen do this better. ATP is therefore an immediate energy source, so cells do not store large amounts of ATP, but just maintain a few seconds supply. And it's good as ATP is rapidly reformed from ADP plus inorganic phosphate or PI. ATP is a better immediate energy source than glucose because each ATP molecule releases energy, less energy than each glucose molecule, and the energy for reactions is released in smaller, more manageable quantities rather than greater, less manageable amounts released from glucose. The hydrolysis of ATP to ADP is a single reaction that releases immediate energy. The breakdown of glucose is a long series of reactions and the energy release takes longer. ATP cannot be stored, so it has to be continuously made in the mitochondria of cells. Cells such as muscle fibres and epithelium of the small intestine, which require energy for movement and active transport, have many mitochondria. ATP is used in energy-requiring processes, including metabolic processes to build up macromolecules from their basic units, like making starch from glucose or polypeptides from amino acids. Movement, energy from muscle contraction, the energy for filaments of muscle to slide past each other and shorten the length of the muscle fibre. Active transport, to change the shape of the carrier proteins in plasma membranes, and it allows molecules to be moved against their concentration gradient. Secretion from lysosomes for secretion of cell products. Activation of molecules. Inorganic phosphate released during hydrolysis of ATP is used to phosphorylate other compounds in order to make them more reactive, therefore lowering the activation energy in enzyme-catalyzed reactions. For example, addition of phosphate to glucose at the start of glycolysis. Just a worked exam question now. So water is used to hydrolyze ATP. Name the two products of ATP hydrolysis. Adenosine diphosphate and inorganic phosphate. Adenosine triphosphate or ATP is a nucleotide derivative. Contrast the structure of ATP and a nucleotide found in DNA to give two differences. Well, ATP has ribose, and DNA nucleotide has deoxyribose. ATP has 3 phosphate groups, whereas DNA molecule has 1 phosphate group. ATP, the base is always adenine, but in DNA, the nucleotide base can be different or varies. Just to point out that you could annotate diagrams of each as well to gain marks for it. Scientists investigated treatment of a human bladder infection caused by a species of bacterium. This species of bacterium is often resistant to the antibiotics currently used for treatment. Place a tick in the appropriate box next to the equation which represents a reaction catalyzed by ATP synthase. Okay, well it would be ADP plus PI goes to ATP plus H2O, because if you're synthesizing it, you need to take away the water. So water should be given off as one of the products. So in summary, a single molecule of adenosine triphosphate or ATP is a nucleotide derivative and is formed from a molecule of ribose, a molecule of adenine and 3 phosphate groups. Hydrolysis of ATP to adenosine diphosphate or ADP and an inorganic phosphate group PI is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP hydrolase. The hydrolysis of ATP can be coupled to energy requiring reactions within cells. The inorganic phosphate released during the hydrolysis of ATP can be used to phosphorylate other compounds, often making them more reactive. ATP is resynthesized by the condensation of ADP plus PI. The reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP synthase during photosynthesis or during respiration.